14, right? 16, sorry, yeah, that would be 6 years ago. Yep. 2016. And now he's vice chair of the Utah Republican Party and is living down in Washington County. So we are honored to have him here with us tonight as part of the Political Leadership Institute series that we're putting on. We wanted it to be all about the caucus system, the convention system, how we manage and navigate that process, basically so that the average layperson could come in and totally understand the process and learn how to essentially kick butt and be elected and just, you know, rock the system. It's so important to understand and know here in Utah. It plays such an integral part of what we do. So with that being said, we thank Jordan so much for his time, and I'll turn the time over to you, Jordan. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Devin. Devin and I have been friends for years. I met Devin my first day, I think, in DC back in 2013. So it's been 9 years. We both were out in DC together and now found our way back to Utah, and I'm so grateful to be back. I live in Washington County, as Devin said, and it snowed today down here. Winter has finally arrived in Washington County, and I'm a sunshine and a warm weather guy, but I'm not complaining because we absolutely need the water down here. So I will let it snow for a couple days if it means I have water coming out of my faucet this summer. So really grateful for the rain and the snow that we're receiving. But it is caucus convention time in the state. I'm a product of the caucus system in my role as vice chair of the Utah Republican Party. I was elected at the convention last year, so almost a year ago.
Bonanza of Zoom today.
Elected by the state delegates at that convention. So we're going to talk about what the word caucus means, how it works, how it all operates, how you can get involved, and how you can have a voice in the political process here in Utah. If you have attended a caucus meeting, that's awesome. I'm so happy that you have. If you have not attended a caucus meeting, let's make it your goal to attend this year. Caucuses are right around the corner. I'm just going to throw the dates out there. We have the Republican Party caucus and the United Utah Party caucuses are both happening on Tuesday, March 8th. And then the Democrat caucus night is later in the month on March 22nd. Democrats elect about 2,000 state delegates. Republicans, they elect about 4,000 state delegates statewide. So a caucus meeting is a group meeting in your neighborhood where you get together and you decide who will represent your neighborhood, your voice at the state conventions where all of our political nominees are nominated. The meetings can last anywhere from a half hour to a couple of hours, depending on how large your caucus is. And caucus participation has kind of gone like this over the years. In 2016, we saw huge turnout because we decided to do our presidential preference, our primary, on caucus night. So that drove a lot of turnout to caucus night because people attended caucus to give their preference for president of the United States in 2016. As we all know, Donald Trump, I think, took a distant 4th place in Utah that year in 2016, ended up going on to be the Republican nominee and then winning that fall in the general election. But a caucus meeting, like I said, is it can be a small group meeting. Some precincts will get 20, 30 people at their caucus. I've been in precincts in Utah County and Salt Lake County where we had 150 plus attendees at the caucus meeting. But as I said, in the caucus meeting, you'll read your party platform. And I should mention that you have to be a registered member of the party for the caucus in which you're attending. So if you're going to the Republican caucus meeting, you need to be a registered Republican. If you're going to the Democrat caucus, same thing, be a registered Democrat in order to run for office as a delegate. You can attend and observe if you don't really want to affiliate with a party, but you want to participate and see how a caucus meeting works, you can attend. You don't have to be registered to attend. You do have to be a registered voter in order to vote at your caucus meeting. And like I said, these are all held in neighborhoods. You'll often find them in the local high school, elementary school. Down here in Washington County, in some of our more rural parts of the county, they'll meet at the fire station or the police station or a city hall building. Any government building that's open to the public can host these meetings. The fun part is running to be a delegate. That's the whole purpose we hold these caucus meetings, is to elect delegates. A way to describe a delegate is a representative of your precinct, your neighborhood. Like I said, that will go attend the convention where we nominate our party nominees for office. So to run to be a delegate, it's super simple. You just show up. If you're smart, you'll tell your neighbors beforehand that you're going to run to be a delegate, and you encourage them to show up to your caucus meeting so that they can vote for you and support you. You can get one of them to nominate you at the caucus night, and then it's very simple from there. You get nominated to run as a delegate, and then some precincts give you 30 seconds to give a little speech. Others, depending on the size or the number of delegates running, they might give you a couple of minutes. And you'll get up and you'll tell your neighbors why they should support you, why they should vote for you, how you will represent them and their opinions. And then you vote. Every, like I said, registered voter who attends caucus can write your name down on a slip of paper, a ballot, turn that in and vote for you. There are some precincts where you might get a dozen people running for a delegate slot. There are some precincts where they kind of rotate who the delegate is. Oh, I was the delegate last year. It's your turn this year. It just depends on your precinct and how involved people are. Sometimes it can get super competitive. I've heard of precinct caucus meetings going 2-3 hours because they had 12 people running for 2 delegate slots, and they just have to keep revoting until they narrow it down to who their 2 winners are. Each precinct is allocated delegates based on the relative strength of that precinct. And what that means is the state looks back at the past general election and they see where the highest voter turnout was in the state. And those areas will be allotted more delegates than others. So Davis County, for example, I think actually lost some delegates with the apportionment this go around. Washington County,
but we don't want to talk about that. But yeah, that's true. Yeah, I'm also my non-day job is vice chair of the Davis County Republican Party, so I'm a little biased there. And you know, we're gonna be strong again. Don't worry.
Yes, Washington County, on the other hand, we actually increased our number of state delegates, partly because we had huge voter turnout in 2020, but also because our population just has grown so much in Washington County. We're the fastest growing county in the state. Therefore, a lot of the political influence has shifted southward to Washington, Iron counties. Utah County continues to grow. And so they apportion the number of delegates by the voter turnout in the previous general election. Precincts have just barely been redrawn. Some counties are actually still working on finalizing precinct boundaries. So if you don't yet know which precinct you belong in, you can reach out to your local county party. They'll be able to tell you, 1, your precinct boundaries, and 2, where your precinct will be meeting for caucus night. Now, Utah has historically done pretty bad when it comes to voter turnout. Between the 1980s and 2016, our turnout fluctuated between somewhere between 40 and 60% voter turnout, depending on whether it's a general election or a midterm election. But in 2020, so 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, we had 90% voter turnout in Utah, which is huge. That's the highest on record ever that we've ever recorded in Utah, 90%. So the caucus system has been in existence for decades, and we would be having a much different conversation 8-9 years ago than we are today. But I'm going to talk about a couple changes that have come about in the past 9 years. Some of you might be familiar with what's called Senate Bill 54. I think that was 2014 that this became law. And what it did was people complained that the caucus system wasn't representative of the larger population of the state, that only the most avid political people would attend caucus and run to be delegates. And therefore, on both sides, you kind of had the fringes that would get elected delegate. There is some merit to that argument. At the same time, if you look back at our past elected officials, all of them prior had been product of the caucus system. When Governor Huntsman won the first time back in, I think, 2000, in the early 2000s, mid 2000s, he was elected by the caucus system. Governor Herbert was elected by the caucus system. Even our current governor, Spencer Cox, he only won the Republican primary with about 37% of the vote, but he was the top vote getter at the convention among state delegates. So, there are arguments to be had on both sides of this issue, but what happened was people kind of got tired of the delegates holding all of the power. In a state of 3.2 million people, there are 4,000 Republican delegates and about 2,000 Democrat delegates that were deciding all of the elections and who our nominees were for public office. So in order to give more people a voice, there was this initiative that changed the system. So candidates can either go to the state convention to be nominated, or they can collect signatures to get on the primary ballot. And that's kind of where we are today. The caucus system is still loved by a lot of people. Delegates take their responsibility seriously. What I love about the caucus system is that someone with not a lot of influence or money or power can run for office. And if they can convince a majority of those 4,000 delegates as a Republican or 2,000 delegates as a Democrat, if they can convince them that they should be in office, they have a chance. It's much easier for someone with low name ID or not a lot of money in the bank. It's much easier for them to go sit in front of 4,000 individuals face to face and convince them than it is to blanket the airwaves with really expensive advertisements. I'd like to also point out that our current Senator Mitt Romney, he got about 50% of the vote at convention as well. So, and he had to work for that. I remember him doing delegate meetings. I remember him doing Zoom calls like this and town hall meetings, teletown halls to earn the support of delegates. And he ended up with about 50% of the vote at convention and then went on to win the primary quite handedly. How the current convention system works is if a candidate can secure 60% of the delegate vote, they are officially the nominee of the party to go on to the primary or the general election. If no candidate reaches that 60% threshold, the top 2 vote getters will then go to a primary. So there's a lot of, it's kind of fun. If you've never been to a convention, it's high energy. The delegates are excited. They've done their research. They've vetted the candidates. And that's, like I said, what I love most about the caucus system is as a state delegate, I get to research each of the candidates, look at their policies in depth, call them on the phone, shoot them an email. They're responsive. They'll get back to me. They'll answer my questions because I'm a delegate. And then I take all of the information that I've gathered and I go to convention and I cast my vote. And what's interesting is there's a large portion of delegates who might have done their research, but they go into the convention undecided on who they're going to end up supporting. And the candidates get a chance to get up on stage and they give a speech and they rally the troops and they get people excited. And I've seen instances where 2012, when Mia Love was running for Congress in the 4th district. And I remember, no one thought she was going to be victorious going into convention, but she gave a really great speech, and there were a lot of people running for that seat that year. She gave a really great speech. A lot of people, it was their first time hearing her speak. She ended up winning at convention with a large majority of the delegate vote. So you never know what could happen at convention. There are a lot of surprises that happen at convention. So yeah, you're elected delegate, you go to the state convention, you've done your research, you vet the candidates, you ask them the hard questions, and then you go to the convention and you vote. And if no candidate, like I said, gets 60% of the vote at convention, the top 2 will end up going on to a primary. The other, like I said, the other side with Senate Bill 54, you can bypass the caucus convention system altogether if you would like to. You just need to put the work in to gather enough signatures. For a statewide candidate, they need 28,000 signatures. For a congressional seat, they need 7,000 signatures in order to get on the ballot. The signatures have to be from a registered voter, 18 years or older, registered for the party in which you're seeking office. So a Republican candidate running for US Senate needs 28,000 registered Republicans to sign their packet in order to get them on the ballot. There are some candidates who they despise the signature gathering system. They don't like that route to the ballot. So there are some who have never gathered a signature, and they rely solely on the delegate support to get them into office. Rob Bishop was one of those. When he was in office in Congress, he didn't collect signatures. He put his trust and his faith in the delegates and was always successful there at convention. But then there are some who rely solely on signatures, and then some who will go both to the convention and collect signatures. Senator Mike Lee is an example of that this year. He's running to recruit delegates to get elected on caucus night. He's also collecting 28,000 signatures to get on the ballot. It's a lot of information, a lot that I just covered, but it's a really fun process. And if you've never been, like I said, make it a goal to go this year to have your voice be heard. Like I said, it's fun to get together with your neighbors. It's fun to get together with friends, take family with you. It's even more fun to run to be a delegate, but it is a time commitment. State convention is a long day. I mean, check-in usually starts 7, 8 a.m. Sometimes you don't leave the convention till 7, 8 p.m., depending on how long of a convention it is. There's a lot of races to be decided at convention, a lot of candidates running, and as a state delegate, you get a say in a lot of how those races shape up or how they end up. I would love to take some questions. I threw a lot of information at you. I don't know, Devin, if you have any questions that you'd like me to cover.
Yeah, so anyone feel free to type a question into the chat. My question is, so you talked about, state delegates, so they go to the caucus night and get elected as state delegates, but there's also county delegates too. So can you talk a little bit about what they do?
Yes.
Because a little bit of a different role, right?
Yeah. Each county will allocate county delegates. The state will allocate the state delegates. And like I said, there are 4,000 roughly Republicans and 2,000 Democrat delegates. Those are allocated by the state. The county then can allocate what are called county delegates. They're elected in the same way. You get nominated by your friend or your neighbor. You give a little speech of why you're running to be a delegate and why people should elect you. You have the vote, and if you're elected a county delegate, the biggest difference is the races in which you vote at convention. A county delegate will go to the county convention, and they'll vote on races that are solely confined to your county. So if you have a state legislator who's running for office and their legislative district is encompassed solely in one county, the county delegates are the ones who vote for that office. If their legislative district happens to cross into a different county, it then kicks that race to the state convention, where state delegates will vote on that race. So it all depends on the legislative district. County delegates will vote on county commissioner, county mayor, anything at a county level is where the county delegates will vote. Delegates will also vote for party leadership. So a county delegate, they'll vote for who they want to be the county party chair or vice chair, like Devin is in Davis County. The state delegates are the ones who decide who the state leadership of the party is. So I was elected by state delegates. Devin was elected by county delegates. So it's those are the biggest differences, but the same responsibilities. You have to vet the candidates, ask the hard questions, do your research, show up to the convention to actually cast your vote. So the responsibilities are very similar, but it's just the races that you vote in that make the difference there.
Perfect. That's a great answer. Thank you so much. Another question that came to mind is if you were giving someone advice that had never been to caucus night on sort of tips on how to get elected as either a county delegate or a state delegate, what would you tell them? I know you mentioned like inviting their friends in advance to try and sort of build their base, but is there anything in particular you think that they should talk about? Keeping in mind that this is, a nonpartisan sort of discussion here.
Yeah, I'm going to tell a really embarrassing story. So
perfect.
I first ran to be a delegate in 2012. Now, this was the year that Orrin Hatch was running for, I think it was his 6th or 7th term. I think it might have been his 7th. Yeah, I think it was.
Yeah, I think so.
And he was afraid because 2 years earlier, he had seen Bob Bennett go down at convention. And Tim Bridgewater was actually the Republican winner of the delegates at convention, but fell shy of securing the nomination outright. So he and Mike Lee then went to a Republican primary. Mike Lee ended up winning the nomination and won the general. So Orrin Hatch had seen that happen 2 years earlier. And the second that happened to Senator Bob Bennett, he knew that he needed to put in some work and raise some money to influence the caucus system. And this is doable. It's legal. You can do it. Candidates do. They what we call stack the caucus, where they encourage their supporters to go out to caucus and run as a delegate. So I decided to show up, and I was like, I'm going to run and I'm going to be a delegate. I happened to be supporting a different candidate that year. And I was living in East Mill Creek, Salt Lake County. So a very well-established kind of older traditional neighborhood in Salt Lake County. I showed up and I got my friend's mom to come and nominate me. And I had prepared this amazing speech that I was going to give. And I was so excited, and I was going to become a delegate. And I gave my speech, and the room was crickets, like no enthusiasm whatsoever. The vote happened, and I came in like last place. And those who were elected were like literally a bunch of like people in their 70s that were like diehard Orrin Hatch supporters. And I felt so defeated. I felt like, what just happened to me? Like, I was supposed to win. I had a really great speech. I'm passionate. I'm excited about this. I came in last place. So needless to say, I was not a delegate that year. So
but you learned so much.
I learned so much. So the next go around, I actually did my homework, and I reached out to my neighbors. I actually printed off flyers like, hey, I'm running to be a delegate. Caucus night is this night. It's at this school. I'd love for you to show up and support me. So going into caucus night, I already had a built-in support system. And it was really exciting to see as I was there that night, I saw so many of those that I knew would be supporting me walk in the door to caucus. And my people showed up, they supported me. I gave another good speech. I was elected a delegate that year, but it's because I had actually put in a little bit of effort. It doesn't take a lot, like maybe contact 10 of your neighbors. Say, hey, do you have an hour on March 8th or March 23rd to come support me? I'm going to run to be your voice in our precinct. I'm going to represent you. And the thing that was really neat was once I was elected delegate, I actually did get phone calls from people in my precinct that said, hey, I know you're my delegate. This is how I feel about candidate X. This is how I feel about candidate Y. Will you please be my voice at the state convention? That's how it should work. In a perfect world, that's how it should work. And I appreciate when people are engaged, they do reach out to their delegates and share. But tips and tricks, be prepared. Like I said, have people there, reach out to your neighbors beforehand, let them know that you're planning on running to be a delegate, let them know that you would appreciate their support. Ask them for an hour of their time on March 8th or March 22nd, depending on your party. And then, if you don't win, it's fine. Just try again the next time. I learned that lesson in 2012 where I got spanked. I was literally dead last in my precinct, and it was not a fun experience, but I learned, and then the next go around I was prepared and I was elected.
Thank you. That's super helpful, I think, for everyone that hasn't been there. How long are the terms? Because you talk about you go to caucus night, get elected, then go to state or your county convention. But is that it? Is it like a one and done situation?
It's a 2-year term. So you're signing up for 2 years. However, we only have elections every 2 years. So in the off year, it's what they call the organizing convention. And that's where you elect party leadership to run your county party or the state party. So that's what happened this past year. It was an off year. There were no big federal elections. So the parties met to choose their leadership for a 2-year term. That's when I was elected. That's when Devin was elected to his county party chair. You only go to the state convention to actually elect your representatives and members of Congress one time. That'll be this year. I'm not sure what the date of the Democrat state convention is, but the Republican state convention is on April 23rd. So that gives you about 6 weeks between caucus night and the state convention to do your research, to vet the candidates, to do your duty as a delegate, to show up to state convention prepared to cast a vote. So it's a 2-year term, but like I said, there isn't a whole lot. As a county delegate, you might attend like a quarterly county meeting if you want to. But like I said, it's not a huge time commitment. The biggest time commitment is going to be that state convention, which can last all day, but that's one day out of the year. So it's doable.
Yeah, definitely, bring snacks to that state convention just in case it can go long. And that's also a little bit different coming off of COVID, right? Because we went a cycle without electing new delegates. So the delegates that were elected in 2018 have actually continued to serve until now, really, until we elect new ones in a week or so. So yeah, that's good to know. It's a 2-year term. How, as a delegate, and people can, if they have questions, please type in the chat. But as a delegate, how do you typically receive information from the candidates? Is it like phone call or mailers or kind of a mix?
Yeah. So I've worked for a handful of candidates during the caucus convention cycle. What we have in the past found successful is we send Zoom links out. I mean, COVID really did change the way we campaign. A lot of it's now done virtually. There are candidates who still do the face-to-face town hall meetings. John Curtis, one of our representatives in Congress, he's a good example of someone who does a lot of town hall meetings face-to-face. But in the case where you are running for, say, US Senate or governor of Utah, and you've got to cover a lot of ground in that short amount of time, we would email out Zoom links to the state delegates. And then we would set a time where they could get on and ask questions. And we might get 50 delegates at a time on a Zoom meeting with a candidate. There's a lot of candidates will often like wine and dine the delegates. They'll invite them to a breakfast or a luncheon where they'll buy everybody breakfast or lunch, get an opportunity to meet these delegates face to face. And then there's a lot of phone calls. I've worked for plenty of candidates who we would hand them a delegate list with phone numbers, and they would just be on their cell phone. They'd block out a couple hours every day to call delegates. Hey, delegate in San Juan County, I'm running for this office. What issues matter to you? What questions can I answer? And there's a lot of that very personal connection. And like I said, as an advocate for the caucus system, that's one of the things I appreciate, is that the candidates have to talk to the delegates one-on-one. They have to put that work in order to win over the support of the delegate. It's not like in a straight primary where all you have to do is put some ads on TV or put some flyers in the mail or get on the radio. But you actually have to meet these delegates, talk to them, listen to their concerns. And let me tell you, some of them could go on for hours and hours and hours because they know that they've got a congressman on the phone, and that congressman needs to hear every little question, concern, idea that delegate has. A lot of the candidates don't like that, but in order to do well at convention, that's the type of work that you have to put in.
Yeah, that's a great point. I remember when I worked with Congressman Bishop, he would reserve a slot of time every evening when, even when he was in DC and people were in Utah, he was just calling and calling and calling and trying to talk to people. So yeah, it's definitely a good way to get attention if you're a delegate. You also might get some swag, right? You can get t-shirts or water bottles or candy or whatever shipped to your house or given to you at certain events. So
I think in 2012, Orrin Hatch bought cowboy hats for all of his delegates that supported him. I remember that. And so
that's right.
All over the convention hall, you saw delegates wearing Orrin Hatch cowboy hats. But you're right.
Yeah.
You'll get swag in the mail. That year, like, people were getting books in the mail, and yeah, it was crazy that year.
Yeah, and even the conventions themselves, especially the state conventions, can be quite the show, right? Sometimes people sort of pull out all the stops and try and get attention. It hasn't been so showy as of late, but I've heard stories of conventions in the 90s when literally they brought an elephant into the Republican state convention. I'm pretty sure Spencer Stokes was involved in that one. That sounds like a Spencer Stokes move. But yeah, so it can be fun too. It's not all tedious, even though it can go on for hours. So I'm not seeing any questions in the chat, but I do want to recognize really fast. I'm sorry it took me so long, but we have Representative Rosemary Lesser with us. So thank you so much. She had, and I don't know if you want to take a minute, you had a little bit of a unique experience with getting elected last year. And it involved this sort of similar process, but on definitely a short time frame because it was a special election. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. Well,
Sorry to put you on the spot.
Not at all. You know that I can speak at the drop of a hat. I was actually in the enviable position of having an 11-day campaign. And the delegates to the state party from House District 10 were my electors. So basically, it involved contacting all of the delegates and being interviewed by them. And then they had, and actually we used ranked choice voting in that particular situation because there were 8 people running for the position for House District 10. We had one town hall and a forum. And so that was basically an election on steroids.
Yeah, definitely quite the process in that short of a time frame, I'm sure. I also want to recognize, and I won't ask him to say anything right now, but President Brad Mortensen, president of Weber State University, is also on. So thank you for joining us. Jordan, did you mention you might have a video to kind of wrap things up?
Yeah, I just noticed there was a great question from Sylvia Newman.
Oh, thank you. I didn't see that.
She is hosting her caucus this year, and she wants to know what she needs to know.
Oh, perfect.
Sylvia, so yes, the districts have been redrawn. I would reach out to your county party chair. They should have maps by now to let you know exactly which areas are in your precinct and where your precinct will be meeting. The caucus night is going to operate very similar to how it has in the past. You will just do a check-in. Usually check-in starts about an hour before caucus. I know that both the Republican and I think Democrat and Utah United caucuses start at 7 p.m. So a lot of people will start showing up around 6 for check-in. You'll need to verify that they are a registered voter and that they live in your precinct. Once that is verified, they can go in and they've been credentialed, and you can then give them their ballots in order to vote. You'll read your party platform. Most start with a pledge, and some will start with a prayer, and then you'll read the party platform, and then you'll go right into voting, and you'll nominate, your delegates will be nominated, and then you'll give them time to speak about, depending on how large your caucus is and how many are running, anywhere from 30 seconds to a couple of minutes for them to give their speech. And then you'll just hold the election, and people will write down who their choice is. They'll turn that ballot in. You'll have someone there that you've designated to count the ballots and tally the votes, and then you'll announce who the winners are. So reach out to your county party chair. They should have the caucus location and the new maps available for you. So yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. And just most counties, at least I know in Davis County, we're doing a sort of a caucus packet pickup the week before. And in that packet, we'll have sort of all the instructions for how to run a meeting and kind of what we'll need from the individual people that are hosting. So
it looks like
President Mortensen. Yeah, you saw the
great
question.
question.
Okay, that's a great question. Can you be both a county delegate and a state delegate? So thank you, President, for the question.
You can be both a county and a state delegate if you run for both positions. It also depends on how many people show up to your caucus night, how many want to run. If you want to dedicate that much time to being both, that's great. If you would rather have more influence on your more local elections, then county delegate's probably the right answer for you. If you want to have a say in who's running for US Senate or for Congress, state delegate would probably be a better route for you. President Mortensen also asked if it's still important, the caucus system, given the signature route. And I say yes. One of the reasons is exactly what Rep. Lesser was talking about. In the case where there is a vacancy, it's really simple to then kick that election to the delegates. You don't have to hold a whole new primary election. But the delegates are in place and ready to go anytime there's a special election needed. And for someone like Representative Lesser, it's much easier to reach out to 100 delegates than it is to try and contact every single voter in your legislative district. So just for practicality reasons, able to fill vacancies easier. And then I think that delegates truly take their role seriously, and they do their homework, and they vet candidates, and they ask the hard questions, and it requires our elected officials to be more accountable, because they know that they have to face the delegates, that the delegates are not going to let them off easy a lot of times. And as a legislator, you might not appreciate that or like that, but the delegates really appreciate that they are heard, that they're thought about, and that when you're voting, you often keep them in mind. So I think it's still important. And like I said, a lot of candidates are doing both. They're running as a convention candidate and collecting signatures at the same time. So I think our candidates still value the caucus convention system as well.
That's true. Okay, I'm not really seeing any fresh questions right now.
It looked like Sylvia did have one. So Sylvia, ballots should be provided from your county party. You should get a caucus packet, which will have the caucus rules. They'll have printouts of ballots that you can cut and distribute to your precinct, your caucus attendees that night. So like I said, your biggest resource is going to be your county party. Reach out to them. They should have that caucus packet for you that usually includes ballots. And you might need to make some on your own if for some reason the caucus turnout is huge. You might have been given 100 ballots in your packet and you might need 150. So it's always good to have some slips of paper on hand in case you need extras.
That's great advice. Thank you, Jordan. So now I don't know if you mentioned earlier you had a video to show that kind of summarized the process. Do you want to tee that up?
Yeah. Can I share my screen, or do you have to?
You should be able to share your screen. Yeah. And this is it kind of gives a summary of the process. It was produced by, I think, the Washington County Republican Party, but the information applies to, all the parties. So.
Okay, I'm looking for the screen share button.
Leah knows all things when it comes to Zoom. She can do anything.
But I don't, so it depends where you have your taskbar for Zoom set up on your computer, Jordan, sorry.
Okay, I see reactions, record, share screen. There we go. Okay.
It always takes longer to find when everyone is staring at you, right?
I know, right? Hey, can you all see this?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay, I'm gonna play it. It's a brief, less than 2 minutes, but it's a good kind of brings everything together that we've talked about tonight into one. It's a visual, so I'm a visual learner, so hopefully this works for you as well.
Years, you and your neighbors come together in a meeting called a caucus to vote for those who will best represent you. Now, these representatives are called delegates because they're delegated the responsibility of researching the candidates. For example, John, your friendly, trusted neighbor, has always been there for you and serves in the community as your delegate. In reality, the individuals elected as your delegates are your respected neighborhood leaders like John. To be elected as a delegate, you must receive a majority of the vote. This ensures the views of the majority are represented. You vote for your friend John, or perhaps you are selected as a delegate to represent your neighborhood. Your voice is heard through empowering delegates you know, trust, and can converse with. The caucus system allows you to get on with your life, while John worries about the politics. The delegates you select are charged with the task of thoroughly interviewing candidates for office. This is the reason Utah is the best managed state. The caucus system requires candidates to speak directly to voters. In primary elections, candidates are required to reach tens of thousands of people in a very short period of time. Candidates are required to raise large sums of money, making them accountable to lobbyists instead of you. Candidates then turn to political consultants, paying them large sums of money to get their political message out through TV ads, automated phone calls, and junk mail. Delegates represent you. Keep politics local. Come caucus with us.
Yeah, so just a very simple illustration of why caucus matters. I love the part where, you've given John the responsibility of vetting candidates, and you trust John because he's your neighbor. He teaches your kids at school. He goes to church with you. If you don't like John, you should replace John with a different delegate, because delegates should represent your neighborhood, your interests. You can go on with your life, taking care of your kids, worrying about your job, trusting that John is doing the research, vetting candidates, and will cast a wise vote on your behalf. But the caucus system only really works if we all get involved, so that all of us can influence who our delegates are that we elect. So, some people talk bad about the caucus system, that only the fringes are elected. We can change that by changing who shows up to caucus night and who we elect to represent us. Because I've had really good relationships with the delegates that we have elected in my precincts. They've been very responsive when I reach out to them with my opinion. I've been on the other end of that, where, like I said, people have called me and voiced their opinion and helped me see an issue through a different light. And that's why I love it. It's the most local representative style of government that we can have. And like I said, it's produced a really great state with amazing leaders and legislators and members of Congress who have done really well for our state. So, like I said, get involved. If you haven't been, make that a goal. Go to caucus night. Run to be a delegate. That's the most fun thing you can do. And hopefully we'll see you at the state conventions this year, where you can let your voice be heard and help change the direction of who we elect and who represents us both at a national and a local level.
That's so great. Thank you so much, Jordan. One more time, remind them of the date.
March 8th, if you are a Republican or a United Utah Party member. March 22nd, if you are a registered Democrat, reach out to your local county parties. They will let you know where your caucus is meeting. I know mine is down here in Washington County at Crimson Hills High School on March 8th. That's where you'll find me. And then you'll find me at State Convention on April 23rd in Salt Lake County.
I love it. Thank you so much. Really appreciate Jordan Hess for taking the time to talk with us about the caucus convention system. It's a great way to get involved. So I encourage you all to do that. Another reminder, so our next and final Political Leadership Institute session for the season will be on March 24th. The Walker Institute will be hosting a candidate night for all candidates who have filed to run in Weber and Davis counties at 6:30 p.m. in the Student Union Building on Weber State University's campus. So mark your calendars, March 24th. Should be an exciting, probably a little bit chaotic night, but it's a good opportunity to talk to the candidates. So thank you all for joining us, especially much thanks to Jordan Hess for taking the time, and we'll see you all next time.
Thanks, Devin. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Devin.
Thank you.